Well, that's weird. I saw you, and I was like, "Uh-oh, what happened?" He left.
I forgot my beer mug, so it's soaking for a minute. We were a little disorganized today.
Welcome to Brewing Controversy. I'm Lucas. This is David, coming to you from both of the cities that have claimed to be the third coast at different points in their histories. If you're here, feel free to say hello. One of Brian's many internet personalities has joined us for the evening. Hola, amigo. Feel free to chime in on our topics and chit chat with each other and tell us that we're full of shit and all that good stuff. This is what we do on our Thursday nights. We get together, we drink some craft beer, we talk about the state of the world, and David drinks weird beers as pregame. And that's what we're doing. So I just got back from a city meeting for the 20-year master plan. So that's going to be neat. First of a series. I wrote a lot of interesting things down on a lot of different Post-it notes, and man, it's been busy lately. Been a busy week, and you apparently were doing a little. I think we got a beer to talk about later. But you were doing a little beer tourism yesterday because I was receiving all these photos from David, the entire interior of Bearded Iris, I believe. Right? No, that was the place you went after Bearded Iris.
Yeah, no, I went to Suzanne's first.
Oh, okay.
Because I'd never been, and it's literally right down the street from Fat Bottom, and we never bothered to look at it. And there's good reasons why. It's not a super happening place. It's a lot smaller. It's a ton smaller. But and I'm gonna actually do one of their beers next week.
Neat.
Because I talked at length with the brewmaster, and his philosophy of beer making is really 180 from where a lot of places are. And I want to be able to share that with everyone because it's such a different thinking about how you make beer. And the taste, like every one of his beers did not, or especially his lighter beers, did not taste at all like I expected them to taste. Right. It was a radical departure. So I had a lot of fun, and I've been meaning to check this place out because they're one of the few places in Nashville that is willing to attempt a Scottish ale. I thought it was a Scotch ale. It wasn't a Scotch ale. It's a Scottish ale. There's a difference between a Scotch ale and a Scottish ale. But it was one of the few people willing to even attempt that. A wee heavy. So I really wanted to go check out and see what this guy was doing, and he's definitely an interesting character. He definitely has a theory of what beer should be. I agree with most of it.
I'm poking around on their website as we speak. What's is it just Zans, or do they try to combine like Kazans or?
It's the artist.
Damn.
it's the artist.
Okay.
Cezanne? Yeah, Cezanne. I think it's supposed to be Cezanne.
Really? Okay. Well, I never knew any of that shit. I think I've had a couple of the beers at restaurants around Nashville. You're right. I never visited it. We never visited it. It should probably go on the list for future times when I come home. I'm going to close.
They are not open a lot. Like their tap room has very limited hours.
Okay, that could explain part of it too.
Yeah.
Well, let's see. Jeez, we had a late as fuck action-packed city meeting this week, commission meeting. It was the first night of open public debate about tighter controls on lead dust in homes. So every greedy ass landlord in town showed up. As did every fed up with greedy ass landlords citizen in town. I believe we all closed down at that meeting at 10:30, and then I went to the bar with some local activists till 2. So Tuesday was a late Tuesday, especially for a Tuesday. But I did go to bat for us beer lovers. My beer story of the week. I didn't intend to speak as many times as I did at the meeting this week, but our old buddy Reverend Scott had to get up there and wield scripture against drinking. You probably know all the passages.
In Grand Rapids.
Dude, the tone deafness of this guy is legendary. So,
and I'm trying to in my mind process this.
You're processing it correctly. Yeah. I wasn't going to speak, but he decided to use the open mic at the beginning of the meeting, which is for agenda items, one of which was a permit for essentially a St. Patty's Day fest downtown. He cited alcohol as one of the major causes of homelessness. It's not, but it's a thing that comes along as a sidecar, if you will, but it's not. The housing crisis, it's the housing, stupid. That's the problem. But he decided to get up there and be, fat, tone deaf. And the thing was, like, that was just dumb. And so, all of it was dumb. So I had to hop up there and defend our beloved nectar of the gods. And I got up there and said it's completely irrelevant for him to talk about homelessness because the unhoused population is not going to enter this ticketed festival. This like even if you think beer is the problem, I just looked up the tickets to this fucking thing. They're $25 to $65. There's not a single unhoused person that's going to be like showing up like here's my $25 for my ticket. This is not your alcohol that you're worried about, sir. So anyway, that was fun. I closed my remarks by saying maybe we could get the Reverend to get involved if we turn some water into wine. Dunk. But I will be consulting with you off the air when we can waste our own time, because I think I want to start coming armed with some biblical references that encourage drinking, and I bet you've got more than one up your sleeve.
Well, there's always the classic of
heathen rat bastard.
There's always the classic of Jesus turning water into wine.
Well, that's what I closed with, so
I should point out that wine of this period was not the wine that we drink.
Wine
of the classical period is. Let me put it to you this way: there was an entire ritual, and the Japanese had the development of the tea ritual, right? And how they would present the glass and do all this. Europeans turned it into a game. And what you do is you'd roll dice, and whoever won the dice game would get to choose how strong the wine was. Because when the wine came in, we're basically talking about something about 30 proof, really strong. And you'd water it, like whoever won would decide how much you were going to water it down.
Okay.
So you could make everyone drink the hardcore stuff, which was considered very mean and slightly uncouth, or you could have
I kind of love it. I there's so many mental images. Anyway, speaking of drinking, it's hot take happy hour time, and this is the part of the show where at the top of the show where we kind of run down a few smaller stories. We assemble things that are new or older but not worth a full topic, and tonight's full topic will be a mouthful of things, because there's such good grief, the hypocrisy headlines are just off the chain. But before we can do that, we got to talk about a few of the topics of the day and the week. And first on the list is the landscape of the Republican primary, if it were. So you've got Haley jumping in, you've got Trump and DeSantis going after each other.
Sausage Ron. Remember, it's Sausage Ron.
Yeah. Brian, of course, sums this up in real short form. I got a story for you. Screw the GOP. So not if they screw themselves first. So take it away, David. You got some tea that you want to spill on this topic.
It's a hot mess. Apparently, no one knows which way to jump, because again, the base is very much tied to Trump. Trump brings those rural voters who they need to show up, right? DeSantis arguably is slightly more appealing, somewhat. The culture war stuff doesn't work that great for him, but he's slightly more appealing to suburban voters. And then you have Haley, not her name, who nobody knows what to do with, because she's running this campaign of going to. She came out and basically said that DeSantis's "Don't Say Gay" bill, which we'll be talking about here in a little bit, doesn't go far enough, right? So she's trying to rope in these traditional conservatives. She has a weird playbook in front of her. Since she's not white, she's somewhat appealing to the some of the college educated Republicans, those that are left. It's a mess. But the thing is, when the Democratic primary started out, no one was going after each other. The only time anyone went after each other was when Uncle Joe would kind of wander into areas where he was going to end up with his foot in his mouth. And the other people in the primary would be like, yeah, you're gonna taste the Locherman on those toes there, buddy. So I mean, and he still won, but he did come out as clean, I think, as he would have liked, which is, I feel like, part of why he's put Harris in a box since the election. But this is not going to be a pretty race. This is going to be a knockdown, drag out, apocalyptic fight if Ron DeSantis actually throws his hat in the ring and he runs up against Trump. Because Trump, here's the thing, Trump can still win, but even if Trump can't win, he's going to go around with gasoline and a lighter and just burn everything, right? Even if he does win, he's going to run around with gasoline and a lighter and burn everything.
Didn't Nikki Haley stick her foot in her mouth about something else in the last few days? Wasn't there something unbelievably stupid? It wasn't. It was. I think
she said something about Washington presiding over the construction of the Constitution. Which here's the thing: the way she said it, she did not say president of the convention, because he wasn't president of the republic yet, because there was not a republic yet. We were under the Articles of Confederation. So the way she said it, she made it sound like while he was president of the United States, he oversaw the drafting of the Constitution. Well, he couldn't have been president of the United States because there wasn't a Constitution yet. Now, technically, Washington did preside over the Constitutional Convention as president of the convention. She didn't really seem to understand the difference between those two things. It's that classic sort of Republicans not actually knowing history moment and just making shit up as they go along.
That makes perfect sense. It's right on brand. Oh boy. Well, I'm all for the biggest possible fucking clown show that we can muster for them. Speaking of the clown show and idiot women making shit up as they go, MTG continues the fan fiction, the right-wing fan fiction of a new civil war or dividing up the states. Every time this comes up, David, and I don't know if this was where you would go with any of this, and I don't want you to end up in a rabbit hole about it, but I always start thinking about, since we know we can't really divide things up anymore, then I start thinking about what are the solutions, and then the whole federalizing of major cities always comes to mind. Like, okay, yeah, cool, you guys go ahead and go on your own in the South.
The Holy Roman Empire option.
We'll carve off Atlanta, the district of Atlantia.
That's the Holy Roman Empire solution, and the Holy Roman Empire.
What can we call Nashville? The district of Athena. Let's just go with Athena. The district of Athena. We'll keep this theme. We'll figure out some sort of classy lady names for Austin.
Don't think that's how that works.
Don't mess with me, man. I'm coming up with a whole thing here. There's a dystopian novel waiting to be written on this line of bullet points.
No,
anyway.
I mean it's. I mean, and you're right, Brian. Secessionists never really think it through. And you're right. Most states, except for Texas and Florida, Mississippi, Alabama. Let me see. Texas, Georgia, and Florida are net contributors. Texas being the highest at about something like last I remember checking, it was something like 50 to 45 cents on the dollar that they receive. Mm-hmm. Florida was was about 25 cents. Georgia was about 10 cents. Tennessee receives 17 cents for every dollar it pays in taxes, so it gets $1.17 back. South Carolina, North Carolina, Alabama, Mississippi, Arkansas, Missouri, Iowa.
Basically, the message is to all those people that just want to walk around trashing blue states and blue cities, you're fucking welcome.
Right.
We say that a lot on this show. We cover that a lot. Like every time this topic even comes close, we always have to cover the fact that we have a system that works together. We allow the shitheels to sit on the back of our wagon while we trudge through the mud for them. And without us, godless, liberal, heathen city slicker types, they'd be 100% fucked. And believe me, I'd love to draw a line and let everybody just get fucked. I'd love to draw a line. People like you that are worth it, give 30 to 60 days, get the fuck up here above the line, and then fuck them. But that's not how it works.
No, I mean, here's my preferred method, and something that I'd love to see happen. And just to clarify, for those of you who aren't aware, MTG went on this whole rant about there needs to be a national divorce. And then she tried to walk it back and say, oh, no, I just meant that people moving from blue states should have to wait for 5 years to vote in red states. And then she kind of modified that a little bit further and started trying to outline this idea. Well, there'd still be a Department of Defense for all of us. I'm like, okay. And like all these other things that were still going to be there.
Taxation without representation, which probably doesn't mean anything to her.
No, she didn't even understand it. The method I would like to see us begin employing to solve this is an idea I like to call federal interdict. Which it's actually based off of an old Holy Roman Empire idea, but also a papal idea of if someone's misbehaving, then the services that I normally provide that person no longer are available. So what I'd love to see is if Texas wants to throw a hissy fit and do all this random ass stuff about we're not going to do anything for the federal government. The federal government does this. They turn around, they say, okay, so here's the deal. That's a federal border on to your south, right? That's our border, not yours, ours. So we're closing it because we're not going to man it anymore. The border's closed. While we're doing that, your mail service, that's a federal service.
Yeah.
Closed.
None of that.
Social security checks.
Not going to happen.
Because if you want to cross the border into Oklahoma or Louisiana, nope, that's federal territory. You don't get to do that. You need a visa, because if you're going to behave like a foreign country, then you're going to have to start suffering the consequences of acting like a foreign country. So
I like it.
No federal services whatsoever. There we go. You want to play this game? Let's play this game.
Yeah.
Your citizen has a contract dispute in another state. No. It's
gone.
It's out.
What about all those Delaware corporations?
Nope. Nope. We will refuse your access to the rest of the federal system. Your access to federal courts is barred. Your access, the federal prisons, we will. Those little communities that like to make a whole big deal about, well, our community runs on a prison. Guess what? I'm sending the buses. I'm pulling them all out. All the guards are on furlough. You're done.
Yeah. Oh, don't forget military bases.
Military bases? No. I mean, they're still going to get paid. They're still going to get paid, but they're going to be confined to base, which means all the businesses around them, that need their business.
So much for that strip club. So much for that bar.
So much for the grocery store.
I like this plan. Let's let her have what she wants. I love it.
I
love it when you paint a picture for me that involves Uncle Sam as a meme with Michael Keaton and the fire poker from Batman. You want to get nuts? Let's get nuts.
No, I mean but it's the idea of a federal interdict. The idea that which is essentially is kind of
fuck them.
She's basically asking for all the benefits of membership in the union without actually being a member of the union,
right?
And not extending citizenship to fellow citizens of the union. Because what she's actually after, if you listen to her and you're talking about what she actually wants is the repeal of the 14th Amendment. And for those of you who don't know what the 14th Amendment is, the 14th Amendment basically said the first and most pivotal piece is that a citizen of a state is automatically a citizen of the United States. Right? That number one. So if you state court cannot say that this is simply a state matter because this person is not a citizen of the United States. No. Yeah. Every citizen of every state is also a citizen of the United States. Number one. Number two, no rights can be given to any citizen of the United States that is not offered to every other citizen of the United States. Right? And this is what conservatives really hate. They really hate the 14th Amendment. Integration happened because of the 14th Amendment. Most of the integration of progressive rights in this country have happened because of the 14th Amendment. Yep. Ironically, so is the proliferation of gun laws, right? Because one of the things that had to happen was even after the Civil War, you would have states, you'd show up and you say, well, I have a right to own this gun, right? And the state would say, yes, if this was a federal matter, but we're saying it's not. It's only a state matter, and therefore your Second Amendment rights don't apply. And
but don't you know, David, all we ever needed was the original Second Amendment, you silly boy. That's all we ever needed.
And then the courts had to go through a whole process of saying, no, this is a right. This is a United States citizen. They are exercising their rights as a United States. I mean, again, the long-term thinking doesn't apply to these people. They want the 14th Amendment gone, and they keep on trying to find ways to neuter it so that they don't have to deal with the fact that they cannot build a bigoted, racially segregated country with the 14th Amendment still in play.
Well, on the note of fantasies of the government or anybody within it that's on our side having the balls to do big things and gutsy things, and I think you and I may differ on this one, but there's a floated theory currently that the president's administration, now it's not necessarily, we say Biden, but it actually, we're talking about a whole fucking apparatus when you say the name of a president. Well, with the exception of a maniac like Trump that just doesn't know how any of the apparatus works at all.
No.
So this theory being floated that the president / his apparatus should just say, no, you know what? Fuck it. I'm not gonna comply with court decisions concerning, in this case, the abortion pill or medication. You know more of the details. I'll let you expand. But when I first heard about this, my first reaction was, oh yeah, let's take a page out of these assholes' book and see how they like it, because they don't fucking care about rules and laws. They just do whatever the fuck. And
yep.
Fine, let's do that. Then the two wrongs don't make a right part of me was like, but Lucas, does that really change or fix anything? Like, yeah, well, no, not really. But man, if somebody kicks you in the balls, you really want to kick them back in the balls, don't you? Anyway, go ahead and expand on this thing.
I mean, and also I would point this out, because basically what's being proposed is this. If someone kicks you in the balls and you have good reason to believe that they're going to keep kicking you in the balls, kicking them in the balls might give them pause about continuing to try to kick you in the balls. That's what reciprocity does, right? There's an understanding, right? And that's one of the problems, the things that conservatives don't have right now, is they have no concept of reciprocity. They have no concept that if you do something to me, I might do that back to you. right? Because they believe that somehow it's this constant behavior of, nah, 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 you can't hit me.
Yeah.
Well, the fuck I can't, son.
It's very much a playground level of worldview in a lot of cases. It's very similar to that kind of thing, like that fucking, chunky bully kid that had the growth spurt before all the other kids, and he's like, walking around the playground like, what are you gonna do? What are you gonna do, huh? What are you gonna do? Huh? And like that's exactly like the whole of their entire political understanding in most cases.
It is. I want to come back to Olivia's comment real fast about our previous hot take. She says, I don't know how they expect a divorce to work. Like literally most major cities in any state are blue. Economies would collapse if all those people just left. There have actually been proposals floated by conservative governments, specifically in Mississippi, here in Tennessee, and in South Carolina, about essentially creating an exit tax that would be so onerous, which they can't do it, right? But it's just pie in the sky thinking of, well, if we do this and we have to, we'll create an exit tax so that you have to sell us all your property at discount and do all these other things that will either convince you to stay to avoid the financial penalty, or put the now authoritarian state government, conservative state government, in such a position that even if you do leave, you have to leave most of your stuff behind, or worse yet, they're not really going to let you leave.
Just more Handmaid's Tale shit, basically. So the theory here with the defying the courts, run that one down for us, and let's see if you and I are in the same place or not. I'm interested.
So there is legal precedent and there is a legal theory about how the presidency relates to the courts, and how Congress relates to the courts. For instance, Congress has all these nifty powers about what they can do to the courts, right? The Congress establishes the courts. The courts exist through an act of Congress, except for the Supreme Court, which is established by the Constitution. The jurisdiction of the court, except for those parts that are established by the Constitution, is established by Congress. And again, Congress is the one who finalizes presidential appointments to the federal bench. The president, obviously, in his relationship to the courts, is responsible ostensibly for enforcing their rulings and for appointing members to the bench on the advice and consent of Congress. It's the enforcement part where there can begin to be a little bit of fuzziness, right? There are two major instances in U.S. history in which the president has basically said the court can find that, and that's great. I'm not going to enforce it. The first instance was President Jackson, and the court found that there was a valid treaty between the Cherokee Nation in northern Georgia and the United States government that established for them a defined boundary of land that was theirs and not subject to direct federal intervention. And Jackson basically looked at the court and said, that's nice. I'm not going to stop these white settlers from moving in, and I am going to send in the army, and I am going to remove these Cherokees, and then you get the Trail of Tears. The second instance is Lincoln. And basically the court, at the beginning of the Civil War, found several of Lincoln's actions unconstitutional. And Lincoln basically looked at the court and said, I'm fighting a civil war. You can sit down and shut the fuck up. Go sit in that corner and think about what you've done, okay? And they did. They came back, and once they realized that the president was going to be like, I'm just going to bitch slap you.
Don't make me take this hat off, roll up these sleeves.
Right? So
in this case, it's the abortion medication, essentially, right? That's what this whole flap is about.
So, I mean, the court, it seems like the federal bench, the conservatives on the federal bench, and especially in the state courts, are setting up to start trying to ban the interstate, movement of abortifacients, which are drugs which can produce an abortion. Because that is still very much an option that is left open to many women for them to still have a right to choose.
Well, and the administration has taken measures to make sure that it can get sent to them and so on. So, yeah.
So what they're trying to do is create this scenario in which I can put abortifacients in the mail in New York and I can ship them to California, but somehow I can't get them to Texas. And that's where things really start to break down, right?
Right.
This legal theory that they're trying to build makes no sense. As I was telling Lucas before the show, and I was trying to explain to him some of this stuff, like right now, I'm sure the state of Ohio would love to ban the transportation of vinyl chloride through their borders. But they can't, because it's a matter of interstate commerce, right? The U.S. Postal Service is not bound by the laws of Texas. The U.S. Postal Service is a federal entity following federal law. Until you actually take the package out of your mailbox and into your house, that package is not governed by the law of the state of Texas. That package is governed under federal law. That mailbox is technically, and this is actually kind of a weird bit of U.S. law, and it gets weird sometimes, but your mailbox is technically federal property, right? Now, the state can get a warrant to search it, but because there's legislative carve-outs, but that mailbox is technically the property of the United States government. So that's why you can get into trouble on a federal level for taking people's mail out of their mailbox. That is a federal crime.
Yeah, it's kind of like the space inside it. It's a really interesting concept. I've always thought that was pretty fascinating. Well, for the interest of time, let's jump to the part of this where you say why you aren't really crazy about this idea, because I still kind of like it. I think it's gutsy. I think it's a very big fuck you that's needed by a certain group of people. But I can also
I don't. First of all, I don't see making this a hill to die on right now that important, because I don't see the court really wanting to play with the Interstate Commerce Clause. Because if we start playing with the Interstate Commerce Clause like that, oh boy,
yeah.
Rehnquist tried in the early 90s to play with the ICC and roll it back a little, but so much of modern commerce and modern industry in the United States relies on. So the principal issue that governs interstate commerce is this theory called touch and concern.
Yep.
Which basically, if you do anything that touches or concerns interstate commerce, you are subject to the Interstate Commerce Clause, right? That's how we got the Civil Rights Act to apply to all these things all across the country. They said basically, if you're a restaurant and you're on a road, which is in part paid for with federal taxes, and you're using that road, you touch and concern interstate commerce, and therefore are subject to the Civil Rights Act.
I love to remind people of one of their favorite Obama gripes. You didn't build that. You didn't.
Right?
You didn't build that fucking road. That's what he was talking about, whether you like it or not.
Yeah.
Let's jump into the train thing. Speaking of interstate commerce, now, of course, we talked about this in some length last week. If you like, it's like 3 or 4 weeks old now. Originally, when this whole event happened in Ohio, you'd be hard pressed to learn about it. The media was doing a fantastically bad job covering anything. The communities were having to throw a fit to get noticed. It was just a hot mess. And now you have this weird effort for the Republicans to essentially act like a deadbeat dad. They showed up, they stuck their dick in it, they made a baby, and then they walked away. What baby? I don't know. What baby are you talking? Train? Greed? I got nothing to do with that. And that's where we're at now, where they're trying to play the shell game and redirect attention. Like, oh, well, Buttigieg didn't show up until like just now. Well, that's a matter of procedure and policy, actually. That's the way that works. You don't get in there right away to start having your little fucking press conference while shit's going down. So they're really on this tear of trying to act like they got nothing to do with it. It's just all failures of the now. Never mind the deregulation, the permissive environment for a complete total fuck show. All the economic implications of all of their failed policies. So that's kind of where we're at this point, right? And they're trying not to admit that they have anything to do with it.
Well, I mean, this entire thing happened in large part because of their greed, their refusal to regulate rail networks, and their refusal to introduce a braking system that was designed in the past 30 years as opposed to 200 years.
Right. You know, it's funny. Last week when you brought up that timing, that age of our braking technology in rail, I thought, this is another one of David's exaggerated points. And then I saw it repeatedly talked about in multiple arenas, including your favorite guy, Bill Maher's show. And it was like, holy shit, literally everyone is talking about this now. Finally, like maybe it'll happen.
No, I mean, and that's the thing is that, we keep on talking about in this country about infrastructure falling down. And the reason infrastructure is falling down is because every time we ask the wealthy to do what is responsible, and instead of trying to just generate the highest return for investors and say, well, I can generate more consistent returns over a longer period of time if I continue to invest in infrastructure and technology.
Yeah.
And instead, we had Bell Labs shut down. We had most of the major research outfits in the United States that were developing new technologies have been shut down. And they've been shut down because the investors who were working with them basically said, okay, where's my 20%? And places like Bell, places like Bell Labs would be like, you mean your 5%?
Yeah.
Or your 3%?
For the project we started last week?
Yeah. No, we're going to give you 5% year over year. And that's what we're going to give you. We're not going to give you 20% year over year. And it's one of the reasons why companies like Apple and Google have skyrocketed so much is because they have such low overhead in terms of labor and research that they can offer these ridiculous returns. And that's what investors like, well, Google's going to offer me 35% return year over year. And genuine outfits that are actually trying to do science and actually trying to develop the country are sitting there going, no, that you can't, this doesn't, listen, if I'm just putting up web pages, I can do that because you've artificially inflated the value of a web page. If I'm designing a new quantum computer, that's going to take a little while. So, this entire thing happened because these rich assholes didn't want to invest in America, and they didn't want to put new brakes on these trains. And we're going to end up with another massive cancer cluster in East Palestine, Ohio. I did get a little annoyed at Biden's EPA chief sitting there being like, see, the water is safe to drink, and drinking a glass of tap water. And me looking at him being like, that's not how this works, motherfucker. It's not the one glass of water.
Yeah.
It's the 30, 40, 50, 100 glasses of water you get from that tap that get you sick. Because it's not about, the water is poisoned, I'm going to fall over immediately. It's my system can't filter out these other chemicals that aren't supposed to be there.
That's like, look, my pee is safe to drink. Well, if you are stranded for 3 days in a chasm waiting for rescue, do what you got to do. But I wouldn't recommend this dietary choice.
Also, I should point out, despite what everyone says, in reality, the reason you're peeing is your body is trying to get rid of stuff, right? It's not just excess water. It's your kidneys being like, hey, that doesn't need to be here, and that doesn't need to be here. Right. And this is a waste product from me breaking that down, and that doesn't need to be here. Yeah. No. Don't drink your pee.
Well, I mean, the point being, in a short term,
do not Bear Grylls your life,
can
okay?
be limited. So let's jump into the last one, and of course, the last one requires another one of our custom. You're getting all the custom graphics today. So this is one of your favorite topics. It's time for an Elon Musk hate boner from my friend David. One of his favorite things to do. So, hate boner alert. I can't tell if you're happy about this one or not. Earlier, you were telling me about it. I couldn't tell if you like this or if you think it's just.
I think it's hilarious because he's having to sit there and admit failure yet again.
So Musk is going to move Tesla to Texas if he can.
No, he did. He did move the headquarters to Texas because he got mad because the state of California said, no, you can't open your factory while COVID is going on. And also, by the way, we have some serious issues with the fact that you have the most unsafe automobile factory in the United States.
That could be a problem.
We have some issues with this. And Musk got his tidy whities in a twist. Because God knows there's no other possible undergarment that man could wear. I mean,
he went to his imaginary bedside altar of wood boxes and firearms, and
which costs like what? It's like $150 knick-knack. That I almost feel like he staged there just for shits and giggles. But I mean, so he moved Tesla headquarters to Texas. And then now he's realizing that Tesla headquarters in Texas, first of all, a lot of people don't want to work for him in Texas because, well, Texas basically keeps on trying to find ways to get people to leave with their theo-fascist behaviors and their inability to keep the lights on when bad weather shows up because we don't want to regulate our power grid.
And the irony, of course, of running short on electricity to manufacture an electric car is just fucking endless. It's a gift that keeps on giving.
And I also want to point out, they could never quite figure out, part of that is the reason why they could never figure out how to get the Tesla plant, which is what he wanted. He wanted the Tesla plant to be built in Texas. He wanted to move the entire plant. And they couldn't figure out how to get it done because, it's Texas, and it's all fucking broke, ladies and gentlemen. It's not good for business. It's not good for people. It's not the only people it's actually good for right now are oligarch style ranchers and oil guys. That's it. Everyone else is screwed. And human traffickers, which we'll get to later.
That burgeoning economy. So now
Musk is forced to move back to California.
Yep.
I will say this.
He's had to just bounce on over.
Instead of Newsom rubbing his nose in it like the ill-tamed asshole dog he is,
should have.
Newsom has been gushing and being like, "Oh, we welcome Tesla back." I mean, if I was Newsom and I genuinely had presidential aspirations, I would be taking Musk's nose and rubbing it in his own shit all over the place, being like, "Bad dog
on Twitter,
bad
on Twitter, definitely on Twitter." Like a live stream press conference on Twitter every day just to fuck with him. Anyway.
But no, Newsom has made clear that, like, for all his burgeoning presidential aspirations, dude, if you're not going to stand up to bullies like Musk, I don't really see how you're going to convince a Democratic voter in New York to vote for you.
He's missing a pair of nuts whenever it really counts in a lot of cases.
Yeah.
Well, let's crack open some drinks. This is the part of the show where we wrap up the happy hour and we jump into a beer review. So it's time to talk about what you're drinking. So I could go first if you want.
Yeah, I couldn't find my beer for a second. I'm like, where did I put it down?
Panic searching. And I have not even opened this yet in my effort to try to just go with a single beer most of the time, and especially this week because, well, there was Tuesday night, and not that any of these were like really mad. Like I had a beer at the first bar, and then gin and tonic at the second bar, and but still, like, I'm trying to not just have a drink every night or whatever. And the big deal is that this Saturday is the beer fest here, or one of, I don't know if there are more than one, but the one that everybody always talks about. I decided to grab a ticket, go check it out. So anyway, if you're out there and you're drinking something, please feel free to comment, or if you want to just comment on how mouth-wateringly amazing my fat kid beer of the evening sounds to you. I'm doing Mass Landings, Gunner's Daughter. I picked this up when I was in New Hampshire last, and this is from Westbrook, Maine, which I'm sure is going to cause some reaction from Olivia's corner of the comments section, since it might be right down the street from her for all I know. Here's what interests me about this. It's 5.5%, which seems lightweight compared to the rest of this beer's existence. I mean, a beautifully aromatic and balanced milk stout with delicious notes of peanut butter, coffee, and dark chocolate. So normally when I'm in that territory with my fat kid dessert beers, I'm in the 7 to 12% range. So it's going to be interesting to see how this holds up with such a, I guess, approachable alcohol. And yes, I was right. Look, it's right down the street. Hey, I work near there. Outer Portland bedroom community. Okay. All right. Good to know. So I picked this up in one of the multi-beer stores that I found right in Nashua, and it looked cool. Art-wise, I kind of liked the way that they had the line art thing going, and Gunner's Daughter just seems like a fun name. I'm already smelling this chocolatey thing from across the table here. It's got like a thin enough piece of it gives you almost a scarlet brown color, but it's pretty damn dark. I mean, it's a dark abyss in there. Oh man, that's good. It actually isn't obvious that it's not as high in boozy punch. I would say the predominant thing going on here is the peanut butter. The coffee is present, but what's the other thing they said? Dark chocolate, and I mean that's getting buried by the coffee. Definitely the peanut butter is the predominant thing. If you handed this to me blind, didn't tell me what it was, I would say peanut butter stout. So it's very good though, very good. I'm glad I chose it for the one for tonight. It figured it'd land a little heavier. It's a big fat can, so I don't mind it. So 5.5%, 4.15 of 47,000 ratings. So it's been around, and people have rated the shit out of this beer on Untapped.
The entire state of Maine has, which I had to ask Olivia, why does a village like Portland need a bedroom community? What is the well water just better out there? I don't understand. Is there an extra 4 acres for your family cow to mosey about? What is a bedroom community to, like, a town that I'm pretty sure was featured on a couple of sci-fi channels as This Village?
I don't know. They've got, well, never mind. I tried. I went and looked up the population. I was going to defend it, but the population is just under 70,000. It's a pretty small spot. But you know what? Some great beer comes out of some small places. Now, defending Portland is the fastest growing city in the Northeast.
Very generous term. If you're going to call that a city, Columbia, Tennessee is just going to love you.
Jeez. Oh, anyway. What's interesting about this is that they do call
is
out
now up to like 55 something thousand in Leaper's Fork. So, yeah.
Wow. Okay. Well, they do call out this dark mythical beer nods to the long past legends of our region's seafarers. I think that's a really cool little poetic note. But then they point out, does not contain nuts or peanuts, which strikes me as interesting for something so goddamn peanut buttery. So I'm not sure how it's accomplished. That's where my knowledge of beer science and food science fall completely the fuck off the planet. But I like it. It's good stuff. I would love to try more of Mass Landing's offerings. So now I have something I might actually seek out on my next trip up to the work zone. So more on Portland, it's compact, so the people who work there can't really live in the city. That makes sense. Anyway, David, I think you're up next. What you think?
So I went, as Lucas and I were talking about earlier, I went on a little brewery tourism of the Sylvan Park and Nations neighborhoods, which are traditionally kind of slammed together as the same thing, but they're kind of different, but they're kind of the same.
Well, they're distinct neighborhoods separated by Charlotte Pike.
Yeah,
but with confusingly similar street names that, for a good portion of my time living in West Nashville, I thought that I was able to divide it up with Charlotte Pike being the Mississippi River. And then it all fell the fuck apart. Once I really looked at the details, like, nope, there are states.
It doesn't quite work.
State streets on both sides that don't make sense. But it would have been a really brilliant way to have divided it if anybody ever thought of it.
The general rule is you're on the Sylvan Park side if you see mostly Western states. Yeah. You're on the nation side if you see mostly Eastern states.
Except California, I think.
California is on the nation side, right? So's... I'm trying to think. And I feel like there's an Eastern state on the Sylvan Park side, and I can't remember. Delaware. I think Delaware is on the Sylvan Park side.
You're right about that. Yeah.
So I mean, none of it makes any goddamn sense. But generally,
it almost did. Like at first glance, it was like, well, and then no.
Yeah. So generally speaking, if you're mostly seeing Western states, you're on the Sylvan Park side. But anyway, they're two very close neighborhoods. So I was at Cezanne's over in the Nations, and then 2 blocks away in Sylvan Park, like I said, they're very close, is an outpost of Bearded Iris, which is a much larger Nashville brewer. And
you have the added neighborhood confusion that it's kind of on the borderline between Sylvan Parks and Sylvan Heights. So
okay, anyone who wants to talk about Sylvan Heights as like a truly separate thing, I'm gonna fight them. I'm just gonna fight them.
Well, nowadays it's worth the fight because they are two places.
No, it's developer myth. It's like people trying to separate Woodmont and Green Hills. It's like, really, guys? Come on.
Fair enough. But there was a period of time where they were distinctly different in a lot of like quality of construction homes and crime, etc. But now it's very much blended.
Or trying to separate White House and Antioch, and you're kind of like, really?
Those are not close to each other, though.
White House?
You're thinking of
not White House, Tennessee, the White House neighborhood.
I'm not aware of exactly what you're talking about.
Exactly.
Okay, therefore. I was going to say like Una, maybe? Una and Antioch? There's a road.
Yeah, you can't really separate Una and Antioch. I mean, not really.
So you decided to pick one up at Bearded Iris.
Yeah, I went to Bearded Iris. When I got their Chief of Chiefs. And they describe it as Simcoe and Mosaic fighting together. It's... Generally speaking, it's a big IPA. That's
you get that in a can or a growler?
I got it in a can.
Show that baby off. You know me and my can artwork. I'm going
to be honest. Bearded Iris is not that creative with their. Yeah,
I forgot. It's Bearded Iris. They have a very branded system, and it's pretty much got some guardrails around it. Yeah. I don't dislike it. It's just it's a series,
right? Here's the thing. Bearded Iris does one thing. With all their designs.
Yeah.
We put an iris on it. We put the same font. We tell you what it is.
We change the color in the background and go.
Yeah. We basically just change the color of the background depending on the beer. It's So Bearded Iris is really famous in Nashville for their home style IPA. Everyone drinks home style IPA. I serve home style in my bar. Every bar just about serves home style IPA. It
They're pretty
is
reliable. It's a pretty reliable go-to around Nashville for sure.
Yeah, I mean, the thing is, Bearded Iris is known for doing one thing very well, which is they are hyper consistent. And are they necessarily doing anything crazy or really big, or even necessarily super well? Right? Is this an IPA that I would necessarily gravitate towards all the time? No. But if I go into a bar and I order a home style IPA, I know exactly where I'm getting. This is basically home style plus is what I would call this. It's bigger in the flavors, and they actually have a double home style, which I'd kind of like to put this up against the double home style and be like, what's the difference?
Yeah, that would be a good taste test.
Yeah,
you should just do that sometime. Go over there and do a flight. Actually,
nobody does flights anymore. Apparently this is the new thing that I learned in the nation's neighborhood. Everyone has backed off of flights. No more flights.
Do they at least offer like a
you can get a half pint? You can get a half pint. No more flights.
I've encountered like a couple places. I think
Suzanne's isn't doing flights.
Chicago. I think Goose Island. Yeah, Goose Island surprised me with that one. I believe maybe. I know who definitely doesn't do flights. Monday night in Atlanta. That threw me off.
The argument that is being made, at least in the beer community, and I feel like it's bullshit to a certain extent, is that a flight does not adequately present a full accounting of the flavors of the beer.
If that's the problem that you're having in your brewery or your tap room, the problem is actually that you're a cheap fuck not pouring enough of a flight. Because I've seen lots of different flight sizes, and they're not all created equal. And there are some of them that I think are 2 ounce, and some of them are 3 or 4. And 3 is going to give you more of that.
Yeah, I mean, when I worked for Tailgate Brewery, I would always pour. I think it was a 3.5 ounce pour per beer.
That's about right, I think. Yeah.
And
I definitely think the majority of places I've had flights, the majority of flights I've had, there's been plenty to get a good impression of a beer. And I wonder if this isn't just a bullshit explanation for the economics of the situation. Because when I was at the Mitten recently, they told me that they really valued keeping their flights affordable. They haven't raised the prices on their flights, but they've raised the prices on all their other pours. And that was insightful to me because, yeah, okay, I can see that. Like, make it up on the high end, but keep the sample capability within reach.
But I mean, to describe this, I understand that there's Simcoe hop in here, and it shows up a little bit. It's mostly the Mosaic though, because Mosaic. I actually am not a huge fan of Mosaic hop because if you add Mosaic hop to things, it just becomes Mosaic hop. It's like adding curry to things, right? If you add curry as a spice to things,
it takes over,
and you're not super careful with it, it just tastes like curry.
That makes sense.
And Mosaic it has to be treated gently. But here's the thing: it doesn't make a beer bad. It just makes it taste like Mosaic hop. Is there can I tell that there's maybe a little bit of Simcoe? Yes. Is there enough of a difference between Simcoe and Mosaic to really make it punch through? No. The grapefruit flavor as compared to homestyle or some other stuff is a little bit more subdued. I'm getting a little bit more lemon. Although here's the thing that I noted, because I kind of got called out for describing their tart beer as cherry. When you get to when you mix
in the
that kind
room?
of level of sour with that, there's not a huge difference between tart fruit flavors, right? Lime stands out because it has that other astringent bite to it. Lemon usually stands out because it has a progression from sour to astringent to a little sweet. And unfortunately, with this tart beer, I kind of felt like they added a lot of sweetness to it. And so that astringent note that would let me know that it was lemon never happened. So I'm like, oh, it's tart cherry, which I was fine with. This, it does have a noticeable lemon. I mean, it's an IPA, so it does have a grapefruit note throughout that's kind of just carrying you through the whole process. I will say that's kind of surprising as I've drank this real fast. As compared to Homestyle, this one shows up, shakes your hand, and then walks out the door. It doesn't really hang out. Homestyle, like if you have a big gulp of Homestyle, you're gonna still feel it a little bit on the back of your tongue.
I think I remember that experience when having it. So would you which one would you seek out given the choice?
I don't know. I'm kind of liking, since it's a hazy IPA and it's a Mosaic, and I'm kind of tired of people fucking with Mosaic. I'm kind of appreciating the fact that I'm paying it to show up, and then it's leaving, right? I'm not going to describe what profession that is.
But the money's on the nightstand.
The money's on the nightstand. That's how this is working. It's just saying put the money on the nightstand, and I'm just going to show up. We're going to do this, and then I'm going to leave. And in fact, I'm already getting ready to pour my other pint of this because I'm just slamming this one. It does a decent job. I mean, if I were doing a lawnmower beer, this might be a little bit bitter for that, but it drinks like one. And like you definitely sit there and you're just like,
pound it. Yeah, beep, I can see that. Well, the next thing that we like to do in this segment before we get into the business of the evening is to give our friend Brian, dedicated friend of the show, Brian, the opportunity to compliment our vices with his own. So tonight, smoking some grape bubble gum. I'm hoping it's Move. That's got to be right. Move Dispensary in Melbourne. Oh, wow. I'm assuming that's Melbourne, Florida. It's tested at 24%, not terribly high. Tee-hee. That's so on the nose. Normally they're like sneaking in, and that was right up front. The associated terpenes make the overall effect set in quickly. Very tight and smelly buds. Dusty as fuck. Very nice stuff. Good deal. Thanks for sharing, man. Always. Before we jump into the big topic of the evening, I want to point out and get opinions. So along the way, think this over. If you watch the show back later, still leave a comment. We're playing with the format a little. We want to have multiple types of things. Part of it is we've been talking about doing an audio podcast forever, and most of that is just hung up on me not getting my shit together and doing the research on exactly what we're going to do for that solution. And then we've had the idea of trying to have like specials that are once in a while, and then the live video show as well. And we're open to hearing from people on frequency. Is it too much? Is it not enough? What kind of formats are interesting? Who would put us in their ears and be enough of a sick fuck to have us accompany their gym trips or their morning walks or their road trips? Or hell, you know what? If you're crazy enough to play us in front of your kids, we'll take that feedback too. So feel free to comment at any time on the things you think we should or shouldn't do with our frequency and our mediums. We are playing with some of these ideas. Some interesting stuff is around the way. Part of that might be to dedicate these video live editions to more of a guest basis. I have 2 exciting commitments here in Grand Rapids. I'll be pressuring David to come up with some exciting commitments.
I have some exciting commitments. I just need to actually sit there and get it set up. We have a couple of brewmasters that I've talked to who have wanted to get on the show. We have some other people in the hospitality and brewing industry that I know who've expressed an interest and want to get on the show.
And then you have some interesting mayoral race stuff coming together, and I'm going to possibly try to go after one of them. I'm not going to say who, see if we can get that person to join us. And then I got verbal commitments here for a couple of exciting guests. One very prolific activist in town is interested, and I think I'm interested in that being our first guest in this format. And then Tuesday night, I got a verbal commitment. Of course, everything's subject to change, but Police Chief Eric Winstrom agreed to do the show in very short order. I told him to sleep on it for a few weeks. He said, "No, I'm in. I'll do it." Like, all right, interesting. So we are going to have some fun with some interesting guests. And what I really like is that it sounds like all the people we've talked to are actually interesting people. And that, I think, could be very, very nice. Let's grab some lapel mics and a couple other drunks and do a live show from one of the local bars. So, Brian, you may not
No, we are not doing that.
Well, we did some versions of this before. It was like a show with a brand. Dave and I used to do these afternoons at Tailgate, and we brought our directional mics. We do have the capability to do one or both of us on site at some locations. I have a couple of locations that are cleared here. The problem is that it's a lot to go out and get set up and get ready. So we really want to make sure that it's a special thing. I'm a big fan of going when you can get a brewer on. So when I went to Chicago and I had Steve and did Turner House Brewing, as kind of a feature, that is the kind of thing I want to do. And I'm going to California at the end of March, and I've already got our friend of the show, Rob, who you see in our comments. You've seen him join our panels at times. He and I are already cooking up a plan to find a brewery and be sure that we can both sit in on our end and do the show with you, David, with the Hollywood crew on the other end. So it's going to be a lot of fun. Not sure when exactly that is all going to go down. We'll figure it out. So, and in fact, there's a possibility that I'll do one of those weeks of travel live from an Amtrak if it holds up. That could be a real stretch. Because by the time Thursday rolls around, Thursday is the departure night. So, yeah, we would have to see what the odds are of me having a signal where I could run my end of a live show from a train somewhere in rural Missouri, I think, at the time that the show, I don't remember what the itinerary is, but it's a 41-hour overnight train ride thing. It'd be really, really interesting. Anyway, let's jump into the big deal here. So the right, the Republicans, the GOP, the GQP, the insurrectionist boudoir, they would have you believe that the biggest threat to society is the drag queens, when in reality, our man David has brought a laundry list of salacious, rotten, evil, sick fuckery that has just been falling out of the news cycle in the last week and a half, 2 weeks, that really demonstrates just the dissonance between what these assholes tell us to be afraid of and them, which is what we should be afraid of.
Well, so I mean, it's just a constant level of strange and violent and purposeful hypocrisy that we keep on seeing. It's very consistent. One of the things that I admire, at least somewhat, about the Democratic Party is that they do want to at least try to be locally responsive. The problem with so many conservative outfits is that they rely on groups like the American Legislative Exchange Council, ALEC, to give them their marching orders. And instead of actually having, we're all about local control, except somebody else writes our legislation and then we slightly modify it and then put it in our state. And so that's one of the reasons why very often you see so many conservative states come out with similar legislation at the same time. It's the American Legislative Exchange Council handing them paper and saying, all right, just change a few words so that it looks like your own work and the teacher won't notice, is basically what they're going for. So it started with most of us have heard about DeSantis's "Don't Say Gay" bill, and then we have bills in Texas, bills in Arkansas, bills in Mississippi, and really egregious bills in Texas and in Idaho to match what DeSantis has done in Florida. And every time we turn around, it's just more of these. The gays are grooming our children. Drag queens are a threat to our children. All these things are a threat. Here in Tennessee, they are playtesting this ban on drag shows, which so many people have pointed out. Like, so no one can do Rocky Horror Picture Show anymore, or no one can do
I think
Monty
the right
Python
wingers
skits.
The right wingers are okay with both of those. I think they are perfectly ready, and I would wag my finger at the far left on this as well. We are unfortunately in a time in America when the extreme radicals of both sides of the political spectrum are absolutely ready to completely delete humor if it serves their fucking social agenda. And on the left, there's a little bit of that going on. On the right, there's a lot of that going on. Nothing's funny anymore if it's off color from their churchy, pearl clutchy fucking bullshit. So I would say when someone asks, does this eliminate Rocky Horror or Monty Python? They're going to say, yes, and that's okay. Because it's not funny anyway. It made fun of us.
Yeah, I don't think anyone on the left is calling for the end of Rocky Horror, and if they are, they're just
no, they're
weird.
not. They're attacking humor whenever it makes somebody feel bad. So both sides are governing with emotion.
Listen, I'm punching down, not punching up.
That's beside the point. Both sides are governing with feelings, and I don't think the Republicans would blink an eye to eliminate fucking Rocky Horror.
Humor, by nature, is a feeling. Here's the thing. No one is just, at least as far as anyone else can tell, no one's discriminating actively against white church-going Americans, right? People are these bills that are coming out. Yeah, right, Olivia. I'm not going to get him going. It's okay. I'm not going to feed anything to the little Bill Maher that sits in the back of his head.
It's like Men in Black, like you open up the android face and there's a little Bill Maher alien.
Need to reprogram that shit anyway.
But seriously, David, I don't think any of these conservative bastards give a shit about Rocky Horror Show. I mean, Rocky Horror in high school is what made me wear a skirt for fun, just to fuck with people. And then that translated to having that skirt on hand when a guy that was wearing skirts at our school got into the local newspaper and was getting chased after by some conservative prick commentator, and a bunch of us showed up in skirts in solidarity. So these assholes, like, they don't find Rocky Horror to be of cultural value at all. They would be ready.
They don't find anything that's not of a very narrow mindset and a very narrow. There is a distinct line of preserving what they view as proper white American culture,
right?
And the sad thing is that there are minority groups that will pile onto this. And I could talk about a lot of theories about why they do this. Some of it is trying to link themselves to power. Some of it is, and therefore get sort of leniency on other items, and bring the bad man on your side. Some of it is, exercising power over someone else as a coping mechanism for the fact that this other majority group is exercising power over you.
Right.
There's a lot of stuff that can go on there. The main thing, however, is that's shocking is the level of insanity and hypocrisy and how far they've gone. Right. You have in Florida right now, you have teachers covering up their bookshelves for fear that they will somehow violate this "Don't Say Gay" bill for fear that they will somehow violate parental rights. And I want to use Idaho as a perfect example right now of where they think parental rights live. On one hand, in the past few weeks, Idaho has passed a ban criminalizing, not a misdemeanor, not a not a civil offense, but it is a felony offense to provide gender affirming care to minors, right? And I want to point out that the process for having a doctor assign gender affirming care to someone under 18 is extensive. It is extensive. There are there are psychological evaluations, there are physical evaluations ad infinitum, right? Because no one wants to be in that situation where someone fucks up and well, kid was just having a hard time. He didn't actually want to be. He didn't actually have gender dysmorphia, right? No one wants to have that. Be that doctor is like, oh yeah, guy said he felt like a girl, so we just went ahead with all of this stuff. No, that's not how this works at all. This is a long, extensive process by which physicians and psychologists look at a patient who might be a minor, typically in beginning puberty, and them looking at them saying, okay, you have gender dysmorphia. And I want to point out another thing about this real fast too. Conservatives keep on trying to create this narrative, right, where this is some sort of new magical thing. There are entire temples in India built for the concept of men who would prefer to be women.
Those people who were born. Those are just brown foreigners, David. They don't matter. They don't
well, I mean, if you want to go for non-brown foreigners, Albania has a 1,000-year-old legal code. It has a 1,000-year-old legal code where women can become men.
They're still not American. Still doesn't matter to these fuckers.
By law, women can become men. Actually, even in Islamic law, women can become men.
They're definitely not okay with these motherfuckers.
And on top of it, there's actually a 18th century English precedent for a woman becoming a man.
They'll still fake patriot their way out of that one too.
You keep on trying, but I'm just saying, like,
nothing. You can't use logic and reason and statistics with these fucking assholes. But the funny thing is, David, the thing that we're talking about a lot right now is like the laughably stupid shit. But there's some genuinely fucked up, dangerous shit happening here.
It's fucking dark, and I want to point out the hypocrisy of their position first, because this is one of the things that galls me the most. We in Idaho, in particular, this is one of the places that over this past month has made it so glaringly obvious. We're going to ban gender affirming care. And one of the comments from the leaders of the Republican committee that put the bill to the floor was that, well, we're generally in favor of parental rights, but there have to be limits. Okay, that's fine.
They're always for it.
Of all people, another Republican brought a bill to the floor of the Idaho State House. What does this bill do? No more marriage of minors under the age of 16. Because right now, in Idaho, how old do you have to be to get married with parental consent in Idaho, Lucas?
I mean, given what you just phrased, I'm going to go with some weird shit like 14.
Yep.
I'm over here like desperately Googling.
It's 13.
Here we go. Here's a story. Well, now apparently it's 16 from 2020, but now I'm worried. Where did it start?
And apparently that's not even the main issue is this.
Yes. Before the law went into effect, minors even younger than 16 could get married with the consent of a parent and a judge.
And by the way, they still can get married if you read the law carefully. They can still get married. The 16 is they can get married without the consent of a judge. They can still
or
get married,
parents, I assume, right?
At 13, which is what this guy tried to bring a bill to stop. He said, no, 16 should be the line.
I mean, I don't even think people should be able to make the decision to be married before they're fucking 25, along with a variety of other goddamn life decisions, because the older I get, the more convinced I am that there's definitely some fucking stupidity that prevails all the way at least through that age. But then, of course, I would apply it to the military and being able to own guns and a variety of other fucking things. There's just no universe in which reasonable people would agree that 16 is making any decision.
I want to be clear. So the parents can't make a decision about their children getting gender-affirming care, but they can make a decision about and I want to be very clear, because here's the thing. If parents were selling their daughters to creepy old women for marriage, there would be an uproar. Right.
I like Ben's question. How long have I been married? 0 years, because I was smart enough not to. And I didn't trust myself to make that decision for a long enough period of time to then rationally evaluate it as a bullshit institution that I wasn't going to participate in, but only to eventually resign myself to, fuck it, we might as well. 2020 will be our 20th anniversary as a couple. Let's actually make it a fuck. Never mind.
Yeah, right. Then the universe spoke and said no.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah. But no. So parents can have parental authority to stop their kids from reading certain books. They want to build this idea of parental authority over education, all these other things. But when it comes and selling their children to creepy old men, I want to point out that there are websites online that Google will still list where parents can put their kids up for marriage.
I mean,
in Idaho,
it really isn't.
And Tennessee, that's completely fine. But parents can't make the decision to give gender-affirming care.
Well, it really just isn't even very different than, like, any arranged marriage in any culture throughout time. Any hearkening back to, like, older American periods. I mean, it really is. I mean, you might as well just fucking, pack bitches up in a fucking wagon with a trunk full of dowry and fucking go to the town square. I mean, it's fucking ridiculous. It's astounding, but it's also, like, completely what I would expect from these pricks, because if we on the left try to do anything progressive and accepting or affirming in any way, the right loses their collective fucking gourd and they go to the other extreme.
And I want to point this out real fast, but I actually tried to pull one up, and then I thought about it. I'm like, no, I'm not going to get blasted off of YouTube and Facebook for this one. No.
Yeah, we already decided David had to cover up his poster that has the destruction,
anti-Nazi thing on it, because
Nazis,
it has a swastika.
Featured a swastika, because the URL, coupled with a handful of stupid jack-offs that have questioned the poster without having any education whatsoever, we decided he would have to, go a little Slava Ukraini to cover that fucking thing up.
Because
yeah. Anyway,
by the way, scuttlebutt is they're getting jets. Yay, Slava Ukraini. We should be ready for the spring offensive.
Let me jump in on one of the things that's floating around out there, which is this fucking Florida House Bill 991. I had pulled this up earlier today, and I wanted to remember to bring it in the show tonight.
Yeah.
Classify accusations that someone engaged in discrimination as defamation per se, and I'm going to get you to dive into the legal definition there, with $35,000 minimum in damages, which sounds like it completely bucks the whole concept of damages, but I'm going to let you dive into that too.
Oh, yeah.
And if it involves LGBTQ people in someone's belief, truth is no defense. I mean, they're just coming after anything they can at this point. So speak to that one a little bit, because there's a little bit of legal jargon in that.
Yeah. So this is a bill that's come up before the House. So per se means as a matter of law. In other words, if you do this, then it's an automatic tripwire. You've stepped on the mine. It's done, right? If, like, for instance, if you are drinking and driving and you hit someone, then you're automatically at fault, period. It doesn't matter if the other person was driving in the wrong lane. It doesn't matter what else happened. You were over the legal limit, and therefore it's your fault automatically. You've stepped on the landmine. So no matter what happens after that, landmine. So when they say, basically what they've said is that if you accuse someone of transphobia, first of all, I want to point out under this bill, you cannot say that they are guilty of transphobia by virtue of their religious doctrine, no matter what that is. So you could be part of a cult that says all gay people must burn and die, all trans people must burn and die. And I'm not hiring any of these people, and I will actively hurt gay and trans people. And if I say you're a transphobe, I can't use that rhetoric that you just said as proof,
right,
of your transphobia. Like, in other, especially when they say truth cannot be a defense in a defamation suit, that doesn't track at all, because the truth is an absolute defense in defamation, right? That's the whole point of defamation under the common law. I mean, this is one of the scary things that these people are trying to do, is they're trying to craft this law and crack this 1,000-year-old tradition of law that we use to base all our other laws off of. We have this really cool thing called the common law here in the US. It is a 1,000-year-old tradition of law, starting with William the Conqueror and progressing forward from there, right? So when we talk about property rights, we talk about property rights and their evolution and understanding of them over a 1,000-year period, and use that law that has been crafted over that 1,000 years as guidance. We don't, it's not necessarily controlling, but we use it as guidance. And if the law doesn't speak directly to something, then we have to go reference this 1,000-year-old tradition of law, right? That's what we do. So in matters of contracts, in matters of land, in matters of, for instance, traps. That's a big thing, surprisingly. And it's not an issue that we have have had as much in the U.S., but at a period in the past, it was a big issue. Most laws didn't speak to, well, I rigged up my house with a tripwire and a shotgun at the door. And there's actually a common law tradition called the spring gun cases, which specifies, how could you possibly know this person was a threat? Yes, they were trespassing, but how could you possibly know that this person would harm you when you just set a trap? No, you're guilty of murder, because you had no way of evaluating whether or not this person was a threat. Same thing with why the conservatives are so concerned with stand your ground laws, is because when you write a law, you can override the common law, right?
Right.
And the common law is actually super freaking clear repeatedly about, if you don't have to kill someone and you do, then it's murder.
Right.
If you have the opportunity, it's very clear in the common law, if you have the opportunity to withdraw, right? In other words, I'm not backed into a corner. I'm not in my house. I'm not someplace where I can't escape. If I can escape easily, it's one of the reasons why I don't like assault. So many these assault style weapons that are designed for engagement ranges of 250 to 300 yards. It's because I'm like, under the common law, why am I shooting at someone at 300 fucking yards?
Right.
So I mean, it is. So this entire law is designed to override the common law in its entirety, because common law gets in the way of conservative ideas of religion of religious theocracy.
Yeah.
In the United States, because England was never a very good theocracy. It's very bad at it. Kept on killing our bishops. And it gets in the way of common sense, which is, again, part of the common law, is this common sense idea of how things are supposed to be done. So it does a horrible thing at that. But I mean, it guts this idea of, if someone does something to me, I should be able to sue them. And this law tries to make a carve out where it says, except for the fact that you're trans or gay.
Mm-hmm.
I want to point out, even after the English expelled the Jews from England, if you were a Jew in England, you could still avail yourself of the law.
Yeah.
That was never taken away. They said, you can't live here. We're going to kick you out. But if you happen to be a traveling merchant and you're attacked, well, then you're still, the law still applies.
I was just,
and they're trying to create this condition in which the law doesn't apply. And again, it goes back to this hypocrisy of, we want to create a system of laws in which gay and trans people are excluded from society and cannot defend themselves from our hate.
Right.
But we also want to somehow say that we're in favor of individual freedom.
It's all part of the continued tantrum of the right as they lose relevance and genetic domination in our culture. Like, I always knew there was going to be a fucking fit thrown. I just didn't know how ridiculous it was going to get. I went back to look up some statistics while you were talking on the child marriage thing, and I'm even surprised.
Yeah, no. You can get, like, most states, you can get married as a kid.
That's what I was surprised by. 43 states. It's legal.
Most of those states are 16.
Yeah, well, this statistic is just below the age of 18, but 20 states do not require any minimum age for marriage.
No, they do not.
With a parental or judicial waiver.
Nope.
I mean, like, there's so many reasons why this makes no sense. Culturally, socially, scientifically, psychologically.
Yeah, next time some theo-fascist wants to go off about the Prophet Muhammad raping a 9-year-old Aliyah as his wife, I want to go back and be like, so you're okay, you'd be fine with passing a law in your state legislature that says no one can get married before the age of 16. You'd be okay with that, right? Wouldn't you? You'd be, you're just mad that a brown person did it.
And here's, this isn't going to make everybody happy, but here's the thing that I would note. This is the same group of people trying to tell us how so in their way of parsing this, I am in disagreement. I am not in agreement with the right about trans kids. I'm also not in agreement with the extreme left regarding trans kids. But the right is trying to tell us that teenagers can't make decisions in various ways while discussing this topic. But they're Johnny on the spot to tell us that these teenagers can make the decision to take dick from a adult creeper, in an official married capacity at, fuck all who knows on fucking, 13,
whatever age. 12. But here's the thing, and I'm going to push back on you a little bit.
And that's the hypocrisy factor here for the right.
But on the left, I'm going to say this again, as I pointed out at the beginning. Gender dysmorphia is not a diagnosis that is arrived to easily, right? This is not a diagnosis that you go to your pediatrician and he's like, well, looks like gender dysmorphia. So we're going to go ahead and get ready to transition you to another gender. Okay, we're going to do that. We're going to go ahead and like completely put you on a massive dose of other hormones and a bunch of other stuff. And oh, by the way, a lot of the people around you might want to kill you. But I mean, you do you. No, that's not how this works, Lucas. I mean,
I didn't say that's how this works. I just don't think we should be trying to make so many decisions in certain periods of time when we should just have a more accepting and generic society. But that's a whole separate show, man. We can't do that show tonight. No. I'm not in favor of
touch this because in Texas where they
this shit
criminalized they have also criminalized providing gender affirming care, yet somehow this past week federal agents managed to arrest, what was it, how many?
It was like 40 or some shit.
46,
a lot of fucking people.
46 men in relation to child sex trafficking in Texas, of which at least a handful of them were previously elected Republican officials.
And what's funny is when you look at the lineup of people, and of course, there's another thing that's not
shocking.
Really happy. You look at the little grid of photos, and it's like, ooh, boy, there might be some exceptions, but this is a pretty fucking stereotypical fucking lineup of almost definitely Trumpy guys.
No, I want to point out that that's one of the things that's we're running into is Proud Boys and militias showing up to try and oppose drag queen story. I mean, I want to point this out. My mom, my grandmother was a librarian. My mom was a librarian, a teacher and a librarian. They were both teachers and librarians. I can tell you from their perspective, anyone who's willing to show up and read to children is on the right side, except for like obvious, I don't know, pedos. Like
and
hi,
W
children,
on 9/11.
I'd like to read you a book. Like, oh, you're a Republican. You need to be someplace else. It's obviously you're in a library. You must be lost.
Yes, the child bride store is actually down at the end of the block in the left.
But I mean, we're talking about a group of people who are actively engaging in empowering children, as opposed to a group of people who constantly want to disempower children.
Mm-hmm.
One of the ironies in this entire scenario is Republicans keep on talking about empowering parents, but not empowering children. And one of the ways that they keep on doing that is they keep on talking about the new method, and Idaho has proposed this. Arizona's already done it, and we already talked about what a clusterfuck that's been. With parents taking the money the state has given them to educate their child and simply buying new shit for themselves and not educating their child.
Yeah.
We keep on hearing these stories about we're going to strip this educational system from indoctrinating our children. What they're actually afraid of is that children will be empowered by experiences and by teachers and by education. And what they don't want is to have children be educated or have critical thinking. They want a slave population at this point.
Well, what they need to perpetuate and preserve their fucked up existence on the right is a combination of stupid, gullible, controllable, submissive to authoritarian regimes. There's a whole archetype of people they need in the system to preserve all the rotten shit that they depend on to even exist, which is, religious fucking scam,
which
slave labor,
that
people that are not
issue.
smart enough to get a better job or make better money, people that are too poor, broke, and busy to actually come and challenge the government and ask questions nobody wants to hear and insist on rights. Their whole construct is fucked if people get educated and learn to think.
And speaking of how that works, let's talk about the YouTube pastor here.
Yeah, that guy. Now, so he's not in the U.S., but he's aspirational to these right-wing fuckers. This dude was in like Germany or something, and he was. Yeah. I'm trying to make sure I remember all the details because I went through that whole thread and read. And
but he's not German. I want to point this out. His name is Joshua Wesley.
Well, apparently there's something about Germany in this issue.
I don't know where the Germany's coming into but I mean, so famous YouTube pastor by the name of, or relatively famous YouTube pastor by the name of Joshua Wesley, who repeatedly, up until a couple of weeks ago, referred to the girl he met while she was an 8th grader as his girlfriend. And now that she's turned 18, they're finally getting married.
I am, let's see. All right. Youth pastor put in charge of young teens. So right away, red flags, technically red, black, and gold flags, because this is all happening in Germany. Very important legally. We'll get back to that. Yeah. Now I'm interested in what the lowdown is on that. Let's see.
Yeah, it was 20 when they met, and
I mean, he might not be German. Grade. It's just happening in Germany. Why does it matter this is all in Germany? Well, for a mind-blowing reason, actually. The age of consent in Germany is still only 14 years old. This, we imagine, is why he hasn't tried to hide any of this until now.
I should also point out that, at least in Germany, minors also have a greater degree of autonomy under the law. Which is, again, another thing that Republicans keep on stripping with regards to this LGBTQ issue. Yeah. Which is, I can't get gender-affirming care, but I can be some creepy dude's
and this fucking guy, this fucking guy goes well outside the bubble.
What's the thing that won't get us banned from YouTube? Solomonic partner. Is that like
what the fuck are you talking about?
Well, Solomon had like 80 wives.
Oh. Well, I mean, I don't know if I have a problem with 80 wives. It's just, if like 56 of them are 12, that's an issue.
Right?
But so this fucking guy, just to put it into perspective, and yeah, it's in Germany or whatever, but I didn't read enough to know if he's from here and he just went over there for the convenience of the access to the brainwashed teenage girl buffet. But he met this chick when she was 14. He's 20. That's an enormous gap. That's not your standard issue Romeo and Juliet law territory where two 17-year-old kids have the misfortune of one of them turning 18 before the other.
But again, I want to point out
even
this is what they're looking for.
Even Tennessee's 2-year rolling grace period. Those are very different than fucking this guy, right?
Then again, Tennessee is home to our wonderful state legislator, who is 68, and has his 25-year-old wife with their 3 kids.
I mean, how long have they been together, though?
And that's always the case, because he met her originally when she was 16 at a 4-H fair.
See, now I've got problems. Like, I don't give a fuck about the age difference. I will sit here all night and argue with people about this fucking obsession.
They've been
here's the thing we have in our fucking.
She's 23, and they claim to have been
about age differences. But if he met her and started the process, that's different.
Well, that's the thing. She's 23, and they claim to have been in a 5-year relationship.
That's conveniently right on the nose, isn't it?
Uh-huh.
Yeah, well. Anyway, this fucking guy.
I mean, here's the thing: what they're actually looking for, and this is one of the things that pisses me off about this entire process, is they've created a condition in which gays and trans are free game for them to attack.
Yeah,
all across the board, by law and by everything else, and now they're trying to build barriers to even stop them from defending themselves,
right?
Using the basic laws that are already available at their
it's basically the same fucking playbook that they rolled out on black folks. I mean, it's the same fucking playbook.
It really is, because you have to remember, after emancipation, you had a surprising number of black legislators get elected immediately after the Civil War.
Yeah.
And then you had the White League, you had the violence that followed, which scared black people away from the polls. And then you established this new white supermajority, which then passed the grandfather clauses, the watermelon and chicken clauses, and yes, they are called that in law, the watermelon and chicken clauses, that were designed to keep black people from voting or participating in politics. Because again, under the 14th Amendment, they couldn't stop them from voting. Under the 14th Amendment, they couldn't stop them from being members, even being elected to office.
Yeah.
But they could create these clauses where, well, you can't vote if your grandfather couldn't vote. Right?
Right.
Because that applied universally.
So basically, it's the same playbook. It's okay, fine. Now we're stuck with this freedom for these people that we don't like. So let's find out how many things we can legally throw up in their way.
Exactly.
It's not going to end now, and it's not going to end in the foreseeable future. And it's a ridiculous fight to be having. And I'm hoping that it can get rebuked heavily, but I am reluctant to believe that this many old people and gullible idiot knuckle draggers are going to shuffle off the mortal coil fast enough for us to not spend the next 20 years of our lives.
Again, we're back in this situation in which it doesn't surprise me that on one hand we have the Obergefell decision, which frees gay people from having to live in the closet, right? It establishes civil rights for them. It establishes the idea, and again, it begins the process of establishing them as a protected class. No matter how many times the Supreme Court tries to limit that, the problem is the Obergefell decision still makes them a protected class.
Yeah.
And these people are. It doesn't surprise me that on one hand I have MTG calling for civil war. On the other hand, I have a Supreme Court case decision which gives a group of people civil rights. There's linkage here. These people, and again, I want to point this out. This is one of the things that sometimes people get confused about on our show, because we can be a little bit rowdy, we can be a little bit loud, we can be a little bit drunk. But we will never call or support violence towards anyone. That's not what we do here. We
do point out that people could, in fact, end up in a situation where they fuck around and find out.
Exactly. We want people that out quite
actively.
We argue for that people should be aware and understand what's happening in front of them.
And we might or might not advocate for the authorities to bring a 50 cal to the next insurrection. But
I feel like treason is a decent exception. But generally speaking, what these people are looking at, what they're calling for, is they want to establish, and again, like as is happening right now in your state, Lucas, with the most recent GQP chairmanship election. These people want to try and rejuvenate the South, the old school South, across the country, of discrimination and being able to tamp down on these people who they thought were not going to continue to be a problem. And now, and they're being confronted with trans people. They're being confronted with gay people who are no longer willing to suffer discrimination for the simple fact that it makes a very particular group of white people, white heterosexual people uncomfortable. And we say this as two white heterosexual males.
Right.
I mean, it is insanity that we find ourselves here, but there is a correlation that is happening here. There is a reason why DeSantis is pushing a civil war narrative. There's a reason why MTG is pushing a civil war narrative. There's a reason why Lauren Boebert, I fucking hate that name, is pushing.
And why you like? I had never understood your goal in mispronouncing her name, other than to be disrespectful, which I'm 100% behind. But
because that's not. It's like people who want to say, oh God, Dumas. My last name is Dumas. Dumas.
Yeah,
Dumas. It's.
I mean, her name is literally spelled Boebert, Boe-E-Bert, B-O-E-Bert, like
Boebert. It's Boebert.
I think that she was not that kind of hooker. So y'all Qaeda is not going anywhere anytime soon, and we know this. Let's pivot between these two to my pet topic, because we are running out of time, and goddamn, I'm going to talk about this if it fucking kills me. Let's talk about the medium with which these assholes have been actually perpetuating themselves. Social media.
I thought you were going to do this as your pet, and I get to.
All right, so
get down about it.
The SCOTUS had to listen to some arguments this week. Quick summary, essentially, the empowering of terrorism by recommending videos on YouTube that resulted in a death, and the case has made its way to the Supreme Court to discuss the question of freedom of speech, the internet, and Section 230. You know, as the legal guy, I want you to drop the succinct definition of 230 for everybody, because a lot of people hear this buzz term and they don't really understand what it is.
So 230 is really simple. It basically boils down to this: you, provider of platform, have no ability to police everything that comes through the door, right? So as a consequence, you are not liable for as long as you are adequately responsive and somewhat alert to what's going on. You're not liable for what people post on your site. So if you have a site that is predominantly geared towards user-generated content, like YouTube or Facebook, then you are not liable for the content that is posted, as long as you're at least somewhat responsive to it.
Yeah. Now, the rub is that what you describe was crafted in the 90s. And there's a distinct problem with the example that you provided, which still applies. But what is involved in David's statement that wasn't around when the law was created was YouTube and Facebook. And at the time...
No, actually, YouTube and Facebook were very explicitly thought of when that was created.
There's no way in fuck.
With the Digital Millennial Copyrights Act?
Section 230, original pass, acted as part of Communications Decency Act of 1996. Not even the most creative mailman had a twinkle in his eye that fucking Facebook would ever exist.
But it's modified. It's modified by the Digital Millennial Copyrights Act of.
That doesn't matter. The point is, the argument we're having is that this shit wasn't for social media. And when we look at the context of when this came around, this is AOL. This is the comments under a news article. And the biggest reason we're having this problem is because it hasn't been maintained by all of the old technologically inept leaders in Washington that have no idea how anything works with a mouse. And we're stuck with this fucking debate because of government neglect, for the large part, to revisit anything and make it adapt with technology. So now we're arguing about whether or not this should apply to basically completely user-generated platform content, which is where we're at, right? I mean, very little of the platform creates the content anymore in the social media age.
This is true.
And so now, do you still give them a free pass to create a hellscape of nothing but insurrectionists, terrorists, and hate mongers, and consider that free speech? Or should they at least have to get a permit like the KKK when they come to your town square? And
so here's how I look at here's how I look at this situation, which is, and I'm normally one who is more than happy to break out the baby sledge and aim for the extremities of big tech all day long.
Yeah,
all day long. But at least in this instance, here's the thing. Am I in favor of more intensive moderation by YouTube and Facebook and all those groups to hire more people to review more content and put human eyes on things? Yes, I am very much in favor of that. Am I in favor of placing the absolute legal onus on big tech for user-generated content? I can't get myself there. To be honest, the reason why is I feel like we're user-generated content. I feel like there's a lot of great user-generated content out there. I feel like if we have to go to a whitelist as opposed to a blacklist system, and for those of you who aren't familiar with the terminology, a whitelist system is like what I use on my phone, which has gotten me into trouble the past couple of weeks as people have tried to call me about certain things. Which is my phone whitelists things. So in other words, if my phone doesn't already know you, it automatically kicks your call or your text, right? It says, I don't know you, fuck you, go away.
Right.
A blacklist system says everyone except people you have actively said no to can come through. So the problem that we run into
I had to pause you for a moment because I just can't resist. You just use terms that the extreme left that I get frustrated by wants to ban. Go ahead.
Anyway.
They want to ban whitelist and blacklist. You're apparently not allowed to associate...
This is my disappointed in you face.
You're not allowed anymore to associate black with bad, white with
back
good.
to the point of your own pet. The problem that we run into with 230 is the only solution to the opposite of 230 is a whitelist system, right? Of you're approved by the corporate overlord to post content.
Isn't the opposite of 230 to, like, we both agreed in our private discussions that repeal and replace is the only way to handle it. So how to replace it is the question.
Right. And
isn't the opposite of 230 just to create crushing punitive economic pressure through regulation on any platform that allows whatever the fuck the shit is that's against the regulation to prevail?
No. That's so. My argument for 230 is I would agree with you that 230 is too broad. I would argue that the alternative to 230 is creating a clear legislative rubric for what is your standard of care for your site, right? The problem is that it's all vague. That's one of the problems, like with the "Don't Say Gay" bill, and with a lot of this, with Tennessee's drag bill, right? It's super vague, right? It's hyper vague. It's literally designed so that if someone wears a kilt, they could be brought up on charges for being in drag.
Yeah.
Because it's hyper vague. The problem with 230 is that it's too vague. What we need as a replace for 230 is a rubric. We need a clear test to say, were you negligent in your attempt to moderate your content? That's what we need. Right now, we don't have that.
Yeah, but then you're going to get an even worse moderation. I mean, we're talking about, we are the guys who have had the conversation of whether or not an AI has looked over your shoulder on our videos, seen your anti-Nazi poster, interpreted the presence of the swastika as a pro-Nazi symbol, and then potentially punished the algorithm of exposure for our videos. Don't you think that's just going to get worse if we start giving this too much? Like, they're gonna lazy their way out of it. The only way that we can do this is to force them to have human beings involved. That's the core of the problem.
Again, that has to be part of the rubric. It isn't just that you set loose an algo on your platform.
Because that's what they're going to want to do.
No, that's what they're going to want to do, and that's not the correct answer.
And then if they're forced to do a human, they're going to try to figure out a way to marry some Chat GPT shit and have it try to look human so they can say it is. And then there's going to be a scandal like 40 years from now. There's going to be a scandal that Google for 10, 20 years was using a bunch of tech to sidestep a law that required human intervention. I mean, it's just never gonna end. It's a spiral of corporate greed and death.
That's part of the game. I mean, I hate to say it, that's part of the game, is that you create the regulation, and the problem is that without that regulation, you can't punish them for doing that, right? You build a rubric that says you have to do these things to moderate your site, right? Are we asking you to be 100% constant in the same way we don't ask a parent or any other person to be 100% vigilant all the time? You can't be 100% vigilant all the time. Not even a company can be 100% vigilant all the time. We set a rubric for industrial accidents, for all these other things, and we say, all right, so these are the things that you were supposed to do. Did you do them? If the answer is no, then we're going to punish you.
Let me ask you this. Two things that before we reach the final tick of the clock here. The one is an easier question, I think, and the second one I'll get into our debate that we had privately. Wouldn't it be possible to subdivide 230 to only apply to the things it was originally intended for, and then get a separate regulation that applies to the current era products like social media platforms?
Oh yeah. No, I mean, I would argue that, like, if we're talking about something like heavy.com, which is relatively lower traffic, right? Or if we're talking about something like Vimeo or some of these other vids.
Well, I'm not talking about traffic. I'm talking about the category of the platform, like CBS News. If you go to CBS News and you leave a comment, or let's be more down home, Nashville Scene.
Yeah.
Nashville Scene accepts comments under articles. Now, unfortunately, it's driven by a Facebook engine, so technically 230 would maybe not apply to it because it would be a Facebook social media driven engine, but we can figure that out later. Ignore that element of the tech source and just the concept that it's a local news story with comments from readers on the original hosted platform of the news story, not a post on Facebook about the news story. And in that space, I believe that's what 230 was considered to regulate, that you can't come to the Nashville Scene and blame them because some Yahoo showed up in the comments and said, well, I think I'm going to come down to Nashville and blow away everybody that has the opinion of the legislator that was just quoted in this article. And if you're in these comments and you agree with that legislator, I'm going to blow your head off too. And they can't be held responsible for that nut showing up and saying that. That was the contemplation of 230.
Absolutely not.
Why not?
The entire contemplation of 230 was about copyright violation. If you have someone who posts a episode of a show, this was very much in the minds, and it's very clear from the legislative notes,
like this was what in your AOL channel or whatever,
right? Well, this was very much in the notes of what was going on, which was you shouldn't be able to be sued for copyright violation for violating someone else's copyright. They didn't even consider the idea of mass violence at the time.
Well, ultimately, free speech, I guess, is what they didn't consider.
They did not imagine the idea that people were going to organize fucking insurrections off of the internet.
Yeah, but at the end of the day, we're not talking about insurrections. We're talking about free speech issues. Whether someone has the right to come and threaten people or say cracked out shit that leads
but again,
to bad
it's not a free speech issue because it's a private platform, so they have an absolute right to ban whoever the hell they want. So it's not a First Amendment issue.
No. It's not about banning. It's about whether they could be held liable for the activity that results from the commentary or the content.
That's not a First Amendment issue. If you incite violence from wherever, then you're liable. It's just whether or not the platform is liable.
Right, that's the point. And I think 230 was meant to protect that, which was a reasonable concept.
No,
that would be
230 was meant to protect copyright.
230 would, dude. If it was meant to protect copyright, then we've been allowing it to be outside its purview for decades.
No, but that's entirely the entire purpose of 230. Was 230? You have to remember that the purpose of 230 was not to protect, because that wasn't even a concept when this was crafted. No one was expecting this level of organization or political division or any of this when this was crafted. This was crafted to protect platform providers from being sued for people posting copyrighted material on their platform. That's what this was designed for. And that's why the DMCA, the Digital Millennial Copyright Act, followed it, which created the DMCA notice system, which then created the ability for copyright holders to appropriately notify, right? So you have Section 230, and then you have the Digital Millennial Copyright Act, and then which creates a method for copyright holders to officially notify platform providers that something is not, that I have a copyright to that. You can't have that on your site, right? At no point were they thinking about hate speech or violence or any of that.
Well, the problem,
David, that we have right now is that 230 exists, and on top of it, we have these massively expanded social networks.
Well, the problem, social media, like you said, the vagueness creates some of that problem because, under the parameters, like I'm just cheating off of examples of the parameters here, a provider or user of an interactive computer service, that should be the red fucking flag for everybody that it's called that, and that hasn't been updated. Like that should be red flag. Saying interactive computer service anytime after the year like 2000 maybe is a clear indicator that it's outdated.
I don't know. From a legal perspective, I'm still okay with it.
Can't be treated as the publisher or speaker of information provided by a third party. Okay, great. That has an implication for, hey, everybody, I'm putting up a full copy of the latest Matrix film here for you. Okay, yeah, you could apply it to that. They're not liable for that fucker putting the full copy of the fucking Matrix up for you. Great. Nope. Except it just sure didn't fucking protect Napster. So then...
Because at the time, the problem, the reason Napster did not fall under that category, right, is Napster, and this was the argument that was made when this happened. Napster did not provide for anything else other than the sharing of illegal content. In other words, their primary purpose was the sharing of illegal content. YouTube, Facebook, these organizations got around that by saying we have another primary purpose that we can prove in a court of law. Napster, like no one's sharing love letters over fucking Napster. No one's sharing like, oh, I did this out of the club the other night on Napster.
So the vagueness that you reference is absolutely a big factor because that kind of language, like what I just read, that gives the space for the vagueness to apply outside
Exactly.
of
It's
media
the
sharing.
vagueness that's the problem. I would argue that the repeal and replace should be that it removes some of the vagueness. It creates a rubric for when a platform is liable. For instance, if someone is launching a active like terrorist attack, like the Christchurch uh, scenario in New Zealand, where the guy was posting live to YouTube as he was executing people. Now, or not YouTube, rather Facebook. Now, Facebook did its best to turn around and say, "Nope, we are cutting out this content. We are removing this content from our platform." They actively went out to stop this. I would argue that that is the correct behavior that we should seek from a social media platform.
Except it shouldn't have to be that extreme.
It shouldn't have to be that extreme, but I mean that's why you say we have to establish a rubric, a system of saying, okay, is A true? If A is true, then you might need to remove the content. If B is B true? Is B true? Then you definitely need to remove the content.
Yeah, right.
Is C true? No. If A and C are true, you probably need to remove the content.
Yeah.
But not necessarily, right? It's a judgment call. But if A and B are true, you definitely need to remove the content. We have to create a rubric, right, in law to help understand how we handle this. That would be my problem with 230 is that it does not create a legislative test for in law, what we call a test for when we need to stop this.
So when I mentioned to you a few days ago when I brought this up, and I feel like there's a space for this, a piece of what I'd love to see done here is a distinction. Maybe it's legal, maybe it's regulatory. There is a difference between social media and a social network. And we really could stand to identify those differences in some kind of way. And a great example that I didn't have like at the top of my mind when you and I were talking, Reddit versus Facebook.
Yeah.
Reddit is a social network. Facebook has become social media after having been born a social network. LinkedIn is still mostly a social network. And in marketing, people in my role have a responsibility to start understanding these things and start manipulating the universe in that way for something better, I think. And it's something that I'm setting out to try to contemplate and do. But I feel like there's a space where we could draw a regulatory or law-based line.
Oh yeah.
That's like, okay, if you are primarily driven by essentially monetizing rage, which is where we are with this problem, but it doesn't have to just be monetizing rage. It could be monetizing, any negative temptation of human behavior, and we have to figure out a way to make that work. Then, you're going to get regulated differently. If you are in the business of saying, ooh, this person gets mad when they see dumb shit about conservatives, so I'm going to feed them more dumb shit about conservatives and get more money. That should be regulated differently than, there's a subreddit over here for nerds that care about this shit, and we can sell an ad in a subreddit for nerds that care about this shit to a business that wants to have nerds that care about this shit.
The difference has to be targeting, and that's what it has to rely on. The difference between a social network and social media has to rely on targeting. If we're going to do it that way, social media has to say, "I have collected your metadata, right? And recommend." And this is slightly different. I feel like Reddit runs right up to the line on this.
Yeah.
But maybe doesn't quite cross. So you might be correct on that. But the difference has to be that if you collect metadata on your user and suggest content based off that, then you are a social media company.
Yeah.
If you offer links based on other things, I mean, it's a fine line,
It's
and
opt-in
I don't
interest.
really, I don't necessarily know.
David, I think the fundamental difference, and I'm going to apply my profession to it. It's the difference between meta and opt-in. If your network is based on opting into an interest bubble, then you should face a different sort of regulation than if you are digitally stalking people based on data you can collect from their behavior.
But the thing is both do it, and so that's why I'm trying to create a more clear line in my mind between the two. Because here's the thing: if I go touch, there was an attempt on Reddit, right?
Which is a great sub. I am very lightweight about Reddit. I am a very novice user. I have, a reality interest in a few threads or Reddit or subreddits that make me laugh or I find interesting, or to my city. And then, like probably every other American male, I have a garbage fucking Reddit account that's just for flipping through hot chick photos.
Or no, like for me, like one of my favorite Reddits to like randomly visit is Hold My Cosmo, which is,
oh boy, that just sounds good already. I'm gonna go check it out now.
yeah, Hold My Cosmo is hilarious. Which it's normally drunk women doing stupid things. And normally not in a not safe for work thing.
Right.
But Reddit still suggests those to me because I visited them, right? And it suggests that, hey, would you like to subscribe to this subreddit? On the other hand, Facebook actively suggests people I should connect to, groups that I should connect to, and it collects in a much more thorough manner my metadata. Both are collecting my metadata. It's just a matter of push. So I don't necessarily know if that's the best measure. I think the best measure that I can think of in my mind between the separation between a social network and a social media company is whether or not it makes available to me groups that I can join, or whether or not it suggests. If it suggests, I feel like it has to go into social media. I feel like Reddit has to go into social media simply because it suggests. It takes advantage of my metadata and it suggests.
I don't know if
and that's the problem. Well, no, because in law, it is a definite issue about whether or not you put out three options in front of a person,
right,
and point to one and say that's 5-star, that's 4-star, that's 2-star, right? If you do that, then there's a legal obligation that happens about that suggestion. That's what's called warrant of merchantability in law, right? Because I'm the seller of these things, and I have suggested that this one over here is better than this one over here.
Yeah, right.
And so if you pick the 5-star and it doesn't work, then I'm liable.
It's an interesting conundrum, and I don't pretend to have the answer. I just don't think 230 needs to stick around the way it is.
Again,
now.
I feel like 230 is not a good law. I feel like we need to move to a rubric, a legal test rubric.
I like that idea.
That says if you do this, this, and this, then you're liable. If you do this and this, you may be liable, depending on the facts of the case. If you do this and this, you're not liable.
I think you're probably onto something there. I don't know that wouldn't solve the challenge, and
it gets us closer. Like everything else, legal tests are not necessarily universally producers of justice, but they are producers of uniformity.
Yeah.
Respect.
Yeah. Well, I hope it works out in the positive. I don't think this case that's in front of SCOTUS right now.
No. That's what I told you. I'm like, this is a garbage case.
I mean, I think they're gonna. I mean, they're hearing it now, right? So they have to rule, right? Like this.
Yeah, no, they've already heard it, but like, it's a garbage case. It was a garbage case when it got brought before them. I don't know why it got brought before them.
It's gonna go badly for the
Yeah, Gonzalez is not going to win. No.
Right. Well, it's an interesting story to follow. Maybe it'll educate us on, or not educate, maybe it'll enlighten the culture on our way out of this fucking mess, because 230 is a problem. Of course, Trump's version was just get rid of it.
I mean, the irony is conservatives are trying to get rid of 230 so that they can punish social media companies for punishing their users for being rabid racists.
Yeah, exactly. All right, well, that brings us to the end of the show, ladies and gentlemen. If you like what we do, tell somebody about it, and feel free to give us some feedback on the different iterations that we've discussed doing, and stay tuned for some really cool potential guest appearances. It's always a fun time to spend a couple hours with people out there and with you, sir. I hope everybody has an absolutely wonderful weekend. I know I plan to at the Beer Fest, and we'll see where everything goes from there. And with that, we're all set. It's time to wish you well. So we will tell you good night,
good evening,
and
good
luck.